points really I want to make, and the first is that I think we really want to work harder at making sure that the propositions are focused on a broad public health population, i.e. the 30 to 50% of children at the wrong end of the distribution, and not that small tail at the end of the distribution. You know, some of the conversations we have are about those children with, you know, significant problems, or those children that are most at risk of, you know, coming into the care system, or where there are, you know, extreme problems of maltreatment and so forth. And of course those things are important, and of course we all care about those things, but we really want to be able to make a big difference to the lives of 30 to 50% of the children in these neighbourhoods. And why do we want that? Because we want to create a contagion effect. We want, by virtue of a big proportion of children changing their well-being, that will have a knock-on effect for other children living in the neighbourhood, and also, in fact, that maybe there'll be some spillover into neighbouring neighbourhoods as well. So a much greater focus on your whole population. And when you see some of the distributions of the data on your strategy days, you know, just looking at, not just thinking of the children with lots and lots of problems, but looking at those children where, you know, they're not social and emotional regulation problems that are tipping you into child guidance or anything like that, but they're social and emotional regulations that are problems that are beyond the norm, and where we can make a lot of progress. Where there are speech problems, where it's not necessary to get a speech and language pathologist in, but there are speech problems where there is a delay in speech that's going to handicap that child later on when they get to school. So looking much broader into your populations, I think, is one thing that we really want to try and focus on in our work. The second one, I think I've probably said just far too much on already, which is leverage, real cash. Quite interesting. Still, every time I go into a site, the first question you're going to get, by the way, strategy development day, first question will be, how many children are there in your areas? And I haven't always got a straight answer to that so far, so that could be a good starting point. And when you've got a straight answer to that question, the first thing that I do in my head is I multiply that by £1,800, which is, broadly speaking, what we're spending on children from conception to 3 years of age. And then I've got in the ballpark how much money is being spent by public systems in those areas, and that begins to frame a lot of things that I'm thinking of about leverage and so forth. But the thing I don't want to go on about that, because we've said so many things about it so far today. The thing I want to, why are we so obsessed by leverage? We're obsessed by leverage because, one, it is an indicator of system change, and secondly because if Big Lottery come in and spend a lot of money in your areas and there is no sustainability, that is wanton waste of Big Lottery's funds. So that's why the leverage is so important. And there's a lot of really good work taking place on this, but I think probably there's scope to go a lot further with it. The third is around shared accountability, and I've had some fantastic times in the last few weeks talking to people from community. That's the best bit for me when I get into these sites and I'm talking to people in the communities. It's so energising. There's so many great ideas there. It kind of reminds you why I'm doing this work in the first place. And sites are doing great work on the engagement side. But I think the next push is going from engagement to accountability. That not only are you involved in this process, but we want you to help us, to hold us to account. And us being the voluntary sector is not in the community, the voluntary sector and the statutory sector, we want you to hold us to account for outcomes and investments. And that's another step forward on this engagement. The fourth is less equals more. It's kind of one of my favourite mantras. I always tell Karen's joke when we were doing this in Glasgow, and we talked about less is more, and the next day we were going around the group and asking people how it went for them, and Karen said, I learned so much yesterday. She said, and then I was thinking about it last night, I was thinking, if less is more, then when you think about it, nothing is everything, you know, that's the... But less is more is a really good mantra, because most, and Karen is an example of it, and Russell is an example, because they have worked in local authorities in Scotland where they try to do this thing, and they will tell you how hard it is to implement 3 evidence-based programs at scale. It's damn hard work to do that, and to do it. It's easy to do a little bit of it, and it's easy to do it at scale badly, but to do it well at scale will be the hardest thing that you ever do. And if you try to do 30 things, you're not going to do it well. Just simple as that. So less is more is really important. And you are, I know, looking around this room, you have all been involved in initiatives where you try to do lots and lots of things because you're trying to keep lots and lots of people happy. And in the end, you don't get there. You may get there on 1 or 2 of them, but you don't get there on all of them. And when we were talking about Andrew about this last night, he said, yeah, that's fine, but let's bear in mind this is a 10-year strategy. So you may only have a few things in year 1. You may have 6 or 7 things in that 2 to 4 year period. But let's bear in mind there may be many more things coming after that in the 5 to 7 year period, and then finally in the 8 to 10 year period. So, you know, we're not trying to say the whole 10 years you'll just do 6 or 7 things. But in that first setup period, you're going to go about it carefully. You're going to do a number of small things at big scale, I'll come to that in a minute, and you're going to do them really well. And at the moment when I'm around, I'm still hearing lots and lots of things floating around in people's minds. Kind of understandable, yeah, that's where people are, but we're going to have to want to prioritise that. We will be encouraging you to prioritise those things now. I think the 5th thing is, and I kind of feel in a way, you've been bombarded with stuff from us, and you've got all of this scrutiny from big lottery fund, and of course you've got your local constraints as well. So I recognise how difficult it is, but here's an opportunity to spend 30 to 50 million pounds in addition to shifting resources locally. And if we're going to do that, we really want to have fantastic vision and aspiration. And in a way, I think the weight of stuff that you've been getting has kind of been, if anything, just pushing you down a little bit, and we want to be able to push up. And we talked earlier on about the need for transformation. That's what we're looking for. And I thought there were some great examples earlier on about how that transformation might then seep into other aspects of children's services. Andrew was talking last night about, Louise said to him, well, just remind us, what kinds of things do you care about when it comes to system change, And he said, needs-led. He said, I'm fed up of services, where every time you go to the service, you have to fit in with what. He said, I can't go to the doctor on a Saturday because I have to be sick and to take a day off work to get to see the doctor. Why can't the doctor be available when I need to see the doctor? Why is everything geared towards treatment and so forth? Why can't it gear towards prevention? They're all things that we know, but getting to a point where we transform. We all know these things. We've been saying them. Needs-led, we've been saying at Dartington for 20 years. Prevention, we've been saying at Dartington since the start of the Sure Start work, when we had the input into that. But now's the opportunity in these 15 sites to transform that, so we're not having that conversation in 10 years' time. We're having a conversation about something else that we also think is important. Dawn Hart yesterday used the phrase, one of our site managers used the phrase, it's transformation versus transaction. And a lot of the stuff at the moment, hi Andrew, is transactional, and we want to get to that point where it's transformational. So really kind of encouraging you to kind of push up a little bit in all of this. The 6th thing is very much a Dartington thing. I think it's important. I've tried this out a few times in the sites moving forward, but very often I find, I'm not talking about your sites at the moment, but very often when I'm working in different places around the world, I hear people talking about other people's children. And I think we're talking about our children. And one of the simple tests we'll introduce in the strategy days is something we call the My Child test. And I don't want you to be thinking, you can decide what you want to do, but I don't want you to be thinking about interventions that are not good enough for your child. That's the way I think about it. Would I let my child anywhere near the child protection system, not in my life would I let my child anywhere near the child protection system. It's not good enough. It's too risky in order to be able to get a good outcome. But there are lots of things where I would consider that. And it's a nice, simple test. And you're going to be in the room with parents. And I think if you can begin to think of yourself as a parent, like they are a parent, and instead of thinking that they're a different kind of parent, I think that will make a big difference to the quality of the conversation. The seventh thing is trying to think of this very much as a two-step process. That we're trying to get to a broad proposition at the next stage. We want to be crystal clear about what we're going to be doing in 2014 and the early part of 2015. We want to be pretty clear about what we're going to be doing in the 3 years that follow that, and then we can be a little bit vague afterwards, knowing that when you come to the next stage of the process, whoever decides to go forward after June of next year, there will be another detailed methodological process to take each of these activities, break them down in detail, and make sure they have the best chance of being implemented at scale in a quality way. And that brings me to my final point, which is, and I'll say a little bit about our own work in this area, but we're not thinking sufficiently about scale. And we were having a conversation last night with Andrew about this. Dartington has some responsibility now for the Family Nurse Partnership. And the Family Nurse Partnership is an interesting program because it's the most scaled intervention, the most scaled evidence-based intervention in the world. And do you know where it's most scaled in the world? Here in the UK. And do you know what proportion of families, eligible families, get Family Nurse Partnership? 12%. That's the most scaled evidence-based program anywhere in the world. And so, and that's what we call, big scale stuff. That's of course in the UK. But I like to think about small scale stuff. So in your target communities, what are the opportunities of taking evidence-based activities or the science-based innovation that you want to develop and making sure that it gets to 80 or 90% of the eligible parents? Nobody has done that anywhere in the world. Nobody. With Family Nurse Partnership, with any of the other evidence-based, nobody has done that anywhere in the world. And that scale aspect, I think, is a huge opportunity for the 15 sites that are here. And why is that important? It's important, again, because of contagion. Because if you take Family Nurse Partnership as an example, if the teenage, high-risk mums begin to parent really well and get back into the workforce and reduce their child protection and delay the birth of the second child, all the things that we know this programme will deliver, other mothers who maybe are a little bit older or a little less deprived, who aren't eligible, are going to start looking at them and thinking, well, maybe I need to be a little bit more like that and a little bit like that person over there, and you begin to get contagion. I'm using FNP, but you could use any of these evidence-based practices or the science-based innovation that Nick was talking about earlier on. And we've done a lot of work on this at Dartington at scale, mainly with the Gates Foundation. There are publications on our website about it, including one called How to Scale. But the one message that we take away right from the get-go with that is, if you're going to scale, you have to think about it from the start. So if you think about, if you think about in the pilot mentality, we're going to try this with 15 mothers and see if it works, and then maybe we'll develop it from there. 99% of the time those things don't scale. But if you start off and say, what we are doing here is designing to reach every single mother in our neighbourhood, or every single eligible mother for this particular programme within a 2 or 3 year period, then you've got a much better chance of achieving. So I'm going to stop there. Andrew's here. Whether Andrew will want to say a few words, or you'll have questions maybe for all of us. But they were the 8 things at the moment that we were, as well as our own learning yesterday, that we were preoccupied with, and we thought that might be useful feedback for you generally as you go into the next stage of the process.
Thank you all for showing up and putting so much of your time, effort and energy into this. It's great. It's great to see so many people. Michael and Louise, I know I've been visiting the country. They've been feeding back to me some of the things that you've been doing, all the mums and all the community engagement, whether it's Middlesbrough, Blackpool, Bradford, Leicester, Nottingham, wherever it is. It's really exciting. I'm really humbled by what you're doing. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have so much time, so much money, so much space, so much creativity, so much consultation, so much energy, so much passion, so much vision, so much enthusiasm from you. It's an honour. All we do is bring the money. You do the rest. It's easy for us. We just sign a cheque. It's great, and we're deeply honoured and humbled by the energy and passion that you put into it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, really, and good luck. And I'm here for any questions that you have. I'll just make up the answers. That's kind of how this thing started, really.
Well, we had a question yesterday that I posed to Andrew, and the way he answered it was very helpful for me, which is, what if you put something into your children's centre, and there are children who come to that children's centre who aren't from your target area? How do the lottery decide whether or not those children are allowed it? So
yeah,
you said something very helpful.
Yeah, we're going to have Minutemen patrolling the borders.
That's right.
Look, we've got to be sensible about this. We've got to be pragmatic about this. We're not going to police borders, but we're looking at the target wards that you selected the target wards because that's where the need is, that's where the disadvantage is. Do you know what? We're not going to be marching up and down the borders. If the main purpose of the activity, if the majority of the activity is in the sites and in the areas, if there's a little bit of seepage and a little bit of porous, relax. It's about the main purpose, the main majority, the main direction that you want to go. So I think you suggested maybe FNP, but you know what? You might not have 100 eligible mothers in your area, so you can't justify a team of 5 with 100 places. You can't do that. But you know what? You might have 80, and if there's 20, if the main purpose is the size, we're going to be relaxed, aren't we, Jill? Yes. And it's about the main purpose. You know, these are artificial boundaries in many ways to democratic scale. We understand that and we know that, but that's where the need is, that's where the disadvantage is. There will be seepage, there's going to be, but it's about the main purpose, the main priority, the main focus is in the sites and with those children. And of course there'll be seepage and leakage. Let's not let that run away with us so we lose focus. But you know, we're not going to be we're not going to have monitors patrolling the boundaries. Are you? Are you all right?
Can I just say how refreshing that is? Because, you know, we talk about inclusion or exclusion, and in Southend we have our children's centres where we have a network. We try to work together. We allow people to make choices. We want them to move out of their tight clusters. So it's really refreshing to hear you say that, you know, we're not going to be because it is about where people go, isn't it? And actually, without inclusion,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want them just all getting together either.
But please do focus. You know, please do focus on the areas because those areas have been selected for a reason. There's need, there's disadvantage, there's evidence that actually outcomes for children in those areas are very, very poor. So focus on that, as I said.
Can I just ask a question? We're obviously working very closely with local community organisations in the voluntary sector. And so we'll be looking to commission then to do quite a lot of the delivery of the programme and working with the co-production. So your application forms don't really allow for that, and I just wanted to sort of get some reassurance that we can have a commissioning model that will...
Yes.
Yeah.
So the portfolio, I mean, from the very start we didn't want this to be Tesco's. We didn't want a great big conglomerate of a thing just going to land and plonk in the middle of BD5, BD6. You know? Yeah, well, I don't look too far away. Not that's any bias. I have any role whatsoever. I have a BD postcode myself. Yorkshire Dales, really. To tell you the truth. It's not BD, really. Just trying to give it street cred. That's what I'm saying. Well, Commissioner, the model that we've got is a portfolio model where we expect an economy of services and activities in a structure with evidence, with science, but not a great big Teslas coming plonking down and killing everything off. So a diverse economy of projects and sub-projects, all with the same aim, all with the same logic, all with the same science. But yes, we would hope that others that have tried it can get involved.
Yeah.